so then I'll just start the recording and I'll be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
All right.
Attackers incoming. Defend objective A. Barriers on you.
Forward, my friends!
Alright.
Enemy contact.
Alright, so just very tiny micro thing, but here on this map, where is it where's our objective to go, like right off the bat here? Are we gonna go forwards? Are we gonna go left? Are we gonna go right? Like where are we trying to go to?
Well, what I do is if they don't have a junk or massive spam damage, I go left with my team. And if they have something that requires a lot of high ground, I try to call my team to go right, but they often go left in my rank. So sometimes I think it's stupid to go left, but they go left anyways, and then I just stick going with my team, I guess. But sometimes I think right side will be better.
Yeah, so
Far right.
So I probably say that in most cases, now I probably say this, you're correct here. Like in this case, they do have a lot of spam damage, in which it might be better to go right side, where it's not as big of a, like, it's not as much of a choke and in this tiny little room. But in almost most cases, you're going to be going left, which means that you might want to just coming left side, because you're like going to be much closer. You don't have to walk through
Yeah,
the
sure,
open as
sure.
much. But then in this case, this would be an instance in which you would probably try to go right side.
I think I end up with going left side here as well. Like, I don't know.
It's giving out!
Okay. So we haven't talked about tank at all before, yeah? No, we've never gone over tank. Okay, so let's just look at some shield management things. So, you come out, spawn here, we shield as people cross over, which is fine. But then here in a moment, we shield for really not a big reason up against a D.Va. Like, what's in this scenario, like, shielding against that D.Va's not going to do anything, and we probably want to be recharging our shield. So at the moment, this is just canceling our shield from recharging and not really accomplishing very much.
D.Va doesn't do enough damage there.
At that range, and
Yeah.
and Soldier wasn't low and we weren't low, so there's no reason to, to shield for a D.Va. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Again, here we're kind of just shielding against. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're letting our shield recharge, because if we don't let our shield recharge, so if we're trying to push in, right, when we have for example here, like we come out, right, and we didn't let it recharge, so therefore we try to push in when we only have like 600, right? If we attempt to push in when we only have 600, well, now what that means is we're not going to have any shield to be able to push in, and we're not going to have any shield for when it breaks to back out and defend ourselves. So realistically here, we want to be able to push in when we have most of our shield available, right? We don't want to push in when we're only at 600. But the issue here is that first off, instead of recharging, we try to push in anyways. And then that means that we just hold it up, and then that means that we just end up losing our entire shield. So instead of letting it recharge, we just kind of put it up and then we let it break for no reason, and now we're stuck sitting in this room until we recharge it again. So we extend that duration longer. And then let's see, do we push in at all?
So during charging, when I charge my shield, should I go into cover and just wait and do nothing, or should I just push?
So you'd probably be much better if you wait and do nothing than to try to push when you don't have a shield available.
Okay.
And watching the rock, I think we thought we had bubble there, but I think it just got melted pretty fast. So we did a bubble, but then it got melted. So we just want to be careful. It probably is a good idea to, even if you think you have bubble, to just block the rock anyways with the shield.
Yeah.
That way.
I think I attempted it, but it was too late because the signal was close.
Alright. Alright. Alright, so a lot of kind of mini inefficiencies that we'll go over. So first off, right, we keep trying to engage when we don't have resources. So we want to back up, get all our resources, and then go in all at once, right? When we have health, when we have shields, we kind of want to get them back, but we keep kind of peeking and letting them hit our health and hit our shields, and then we keep having to like wait for them to come back, right? So we want to make sure that at the moment we're just kind of waiting until we get our resources. So then the issue becomes here, we have all of our shield here, and we're pretty much full HP, right? We get up to 400 HP, and this is the point in which we probably should be pushing and attempting to take space and going in. And then we get rocked, and then we're back to full HP, and now we should be pushing, right? So we do end up pushing, right, which is good. We shield top for a little bit, but then we pause for a little bit. I think because we ended up getting low there, so that's good. right? But then we go for Fire Strike. Maybe probably not a great idea to go for Fire Strike when we're on the lower end of health, right? So here we're like half HP and we go for Fire Strike, which might mean that we could end up taking a lot of damage, which we do, right? And then again, we go for a swing when we're low. All right. So
Just a general question on Ryan,
Yep.
because I had this in other games.
Mhm.
In this game, partially too, because they had an Echo. If they have air support, like a Pharah
Mhm.
or an Echo, how should I place it, Ryan? Because often in those ranks, air like Pharah or something dominates because the own DPS aren't that able to shoot them. How should I behave to not get flanked or like flown behind? Like often I just
yeah.
struggle really with
So
air
let's
characters.
talk about the differences in our compositions. So in general, you just go in and get more value before they're able to get value, right? You as Reinhardt are incapable of contesting their Echo or a Pharah,
Yeah.
and then therefore your best bet is to go in and get aggressive and kill things on the ground faster than the Pharah or Echo can kill things in through the
Okay,
air,
right.
right? So in general, that also applies to kind of the situation. So have we talked at all about? I'm just scrolling up in our history. No, we have not talked about that. But are you familiar with the 3 different team compositions in the game? And would you be able to like name them?
Well, there of course is dive, I think.
Yep.
Then there is like brawl
Yep.
and double shield.
Yeah, double shield would be more accurately defined as a spam or a poke composition,
Okay.
right? Because you can have a spam or poke comp that does not have double shield. Because as of the moment, right, they would be on a spam composition without a double shield. So spam. Let's just since spam was the one that you're less familiar with, right? Why don't we talk about that for a little bit? And then also I'm going to be sending you a picture over Discord if you'd like to take a look.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here this is just all the composition in the game, right? So spam comp is long distance characters, right? Characters that are able to perform well at far distances, right? So this is going to be on the tank rolls, it's going to be Roadhog, Orisa, Sigma. On DPS, it's going to be like snipers and hit scan characters and longer range characters, and then on supports that would be like Mercy, and Zenyatta and Baptiste, right? So those are all spam characters. How they operate, how all the different compositions operate is very important to look at. So dive, they operate very basically, right? A dive composition just starts off far away and then they dive in close to you, and then just their pacing is they start off slowly, but then as they get more kills and ultimates, they play faster and faster, which is really realistically how every other composition plays. But brawl and spam is where it gets very, very important to take a look at because it's very one-dimensional and easy to understand. A spam composition, right? Because they are far-ranged characters, also like the pacing of the fight to be slow because the slower the fight goes, the more time they have to spam you and go pew pew shoot shoot right from a distance where you can't shoot at them, right? Whereas brawl, right, because they are close ranged composition, and you cannot shoot at them from a distance. They want to take the fight pacing fast because the slower the slower you take the fight, the more time they have to shoot you where you can't shoot them, right? So then finally you have the hybrid, which is just anytime you don't have a particular composition, you're just kind of mixed with things. If you have 4 characters or more of a specific composition, you're pretty much running that comp. Otherwise, you're running more of a hybrid. So for example, if we had 4 dive characters, that's a dive. But if we had 3 dive characters and 3 spam characters, that's kind of like a dive spam hybrid, where you're just kind of in the middle of the both of them. You're playing more deathmatchy. Everyone's doing their own thing instead of following a
Yeah.
particular play style, right?
Mhm.
So let's look at our current in the current game, right? And let's look at the top left or the top right, right? So on our team, what would you say our team is?
Well, the tank. You mean in terms of composition, or
Yes,
right?
in terms of
So
composition, what
so
composition would our team be?
the tanks are more brawly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The DPS are poke or like spam.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sniper or hit scan?
Yep.
And then I think the supports as well.
Yeah. So, Reinhardt, Zarya, and Lucio are all brawl characters. As Lucio speeds the brawl around, then he doesn't do very good with spam or dive as well, right? So Lucio's a very much a brawl character. Mercy
Yeah.
is not a brawl character, and Hanzo and Soldier can work in a brawl, but mostly those three characters are spam characters. So at the moment, we
Yeah.
would kind of be a hybrid with a mix of basically like a half and half mix of brawl and spam, right? We're kind of in the middle
Yeah.
of the two. Now, if we look at their team composition, what team composition are they on?
I think that, oh god, the tagline is probably also like poke and spam. The diva could dive. The Anna, I don't know, is Anna in any particular group? I think you could use them in Brawl as well, because you can get like fat nades on their tank line, but since, yeah, I don't
So
know.
each character has kind of like, because you have each character fits into each composition like with different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So Ana is a pretty flexible character, so she works best kind of almost evenly in a dive and a brawl, and then is worst in a spam composition, but still works because she's flexible. So she's okay in a spam comp. She works in it, but she isn't really a spam character. But she's works okay enough to where it's okay. Whereas kind of I'd probably say it's similar with Soldier or in Hanzo, or I'd probably say Hanzo's a good example where Hanzo's a spam character on your team, but he works okay with a brawl.
So
He's not a detriment to the team.
yeah, but I think the rest of the team is pretty much spam, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken.
Yep. So Echo would be spam, Junkrat would be spam, Ana would be okay, Signia would be spam, Diva I'd probably say would be like out of the whole team would be like kind of the most out of place, but she's also like doable in the spam because she as well is a pretty flexible character. And then
Yeah.
Mercy's a spam. So overall they're on more of a spam. So in terms of what that means for us versus them, because we're always comparing our two compositions to each other,
Yeah.
is we want to play more brawly than they do, right? So we want to, even though we have a lot of spam elements on our team, if we're comparing the two, since they are spammier, they prefer slower and further. We
Yeah.
prefer faster and
Plus.
closer,
Yeah.
right? Even if we have spammy elements, they just out spam us, right? So we need to play faster and closer. Yet by the time we're engaging, right, we're actually pushing in, right? The moment in which we're actually attempting to push in, it's a minute into the game already, right?
Yeah.
We've already given them
Right.
an entire minute to spam us out, which means that they've gotten so much done. So if you look, for example, to compare our ult charges, look at their team composition where Echo they have a 40, 100%, 70, 74, 35, 79, right? And then on our team we have a 57, 55, 66,
Yeah. I see
100,
that.
50, 30, 35. So ultimately, like they have more ult charge than we do, and that's because we're playing into their advantage, and we're also just not really pushing at all, right? So you see the differences between the two, and like we kind of just haven't been playing aggressive at all so far, which is something we want to be doing as a Reinhardt, because we're very much a brawl character. We want to be going in and doing things. So
My
yep, go
yeah.
ahead. Mhm.
My problem is always that I tend to try to go aggressive, but then I just die instantly. I don't know why that is. Like, I have a huge problem dying.
Yep. So
Right.
when it comes to going in, so first off, I would note that we do have very very low healing, and we also are trying to play Reinhardt when we are running only half a brawl
Yeah.
composition, so that's going to make it more difficult to play Reinhardt, though not impossible. This might so what you said you played other tanks or no? Is it mainly Reinhardt?
Well, I think the best I'm at Zarya because of
Oh,
my aim.
hmm?
And the like I play Sigma as well, sometimes Diva Monkey. The only thing I rather not play is Apple because I
Yeah.
just don't know the text, the mechanics, and
So
all
in
that.
this instance, like you might have more success trying to run a Sigma and then just do a spam versus spam composition, right? And then that might work out decently because then it would be their spam versus our spam. So that could be an idea here. But then besides that, like Reinhardt's okay. So we'll just figure out how we can do this. So on Reinhardt, right, you essentially how to survive is the negating of damage, right? So we want to make sure when we're going in that we have health, that we have shields, that we're shield hopping in, which I do see that we did. We want to make sure we're using cover while we're pushing and while we're backing. So ultimately, just a lot of those things is just like that's going to keep us alive. Making sure we're blocking damage and blocking abilities. So that's all how we stay alive, and we'll take a look at like how we're doing that effectively. Let's also talk about just shield usage, and like when you should be using it versus when you shouldn't be using it. So in terms of shield usage, you basically have 7 times in which you use shield, and then any other time you shouldn't be using it. So the 7 times in which you use your shield are when you are low health, when you have teammates who are low health, right? Because you need to shield to block when you're 1 HP, right? You can shield when you're blocking abilities, when you're blocking ultimates, when you are pushing in or backing up, right, aggressively, such as like shield hopping in or shield hopping backwards. And then you can also block when there's a ton of incoming damage and you're trying to block a ton of damage, such as when your team's all grabbed and you know there's a bunch of damage coming in, so you need to block it, right? Now, times where shield is not needed is anytime it's just any day random spam damage, right? So, for example, when we are blocking the diva who's shooting at us earlier, it's not needed. When we are just sitting here waiting for our shield and health to regenerate, it's not needed, right? There's no reason to be putting up our shield against just random spam damage because it's just going to melt our shield. I mean, then now we have to wait longer and we're not going to have a shield. Gives you
Yeah,
more of an
right.
advantage. So we want to make sure we're not randomly shielding when it's not needed. So let's go ahead and see how do we approach this, right? So we get a pick. We have most of our health, most of our shields. We do end up letting Echo hit us with all those stickies, so watching out for blocking abilities, right, like we just said, and then that's going to mean that we take a lot less damage, because here, that gets us down pretty low health, right, off of that, so we want to make sure blocking abilities. Right. Besides that, again, we see Echo hitting us with an ability, and we drop our shield. So we're shielding, Echo beams us, and then we drop our shield to let Echo look at us, right, and shoot us normally, which just takes us some extra damage. So make sure we're blocking the things that need to be blocked, right? Okay. Alright, making sure we're angling our shields to try to block as many people as possible. So like here, for example, like Echo shooting at us from above, so we want to make sure we're angling our shield upwards. Whereas we don't, and then that means that Echo is just able to shoot over our shield and then hit us. And then on top of that, we're like, we're shielding a little bit too much to the side. So here we're just being efficient with how we're shielding. So like if you take a look at it, like who's on the left that we're blocking, right? Where
I
Sigma's on.
actually I actually thought that the Echo was behind me in that situation, I think.
Mhm.
So that was just like awareness issue
Yep.
of mine.
Awareness, right? Because we see when we go up in the air, we see Echo. Oh, we see Echo there, and then we see her shots coming from above. And when we take damage, we can see her above us still, and we see the shots coming in. And then we can see when we take damage from her that it's coming from the top of our screen, which we see from the red indicators, the red hit markers, and then you can see that above your crosshair as well. All indicators in which we're being shot at from above, right? So here we weren't really angling our shield to the Sigma. Instead, we were angling it to the left, and then we also weren't angling it up, and then the Echo therefore gets a bunch of stickies on us, right, from behind us. So we just want to make sure we're watching for the Echo. And then
Right.
that is pretty much it. Besides that, we just got solo ulted there.
Enemy contact.
Okay. Focus the people on point, right? Yeah, to focus the people on point, right? We just want to make sure we're focusing them down first, most of the time. Alright. Here, shielding is not needed, right? When we have health and we have shields, we push and get aggressive, right? So here, we are shielding against no damage, and when Mercy is like right in front of us, and we probably should be going in and swinging on the Mercy, but instead we just aren't, right? So and there as well, we could have used our Fire Strike as well. So for some reason there, we just weren't really swinging, and when we want to be. Nice pin.
I am taking objective A captured.
Are there any are there any situations where I should pin a long distance to get into the fight? Because like it's always told that I only short distance like.
Depends upon the situation, right? There's certain situations where you can pin long distances, but most of the time you are going to want to pin short distances, right? Times where you can pin long distances are when you have lots of distractions, like no one's looking at you. So let's say, for example, like the entire team was fighting on point, and the enemy team is looking at them, and then we charge back to point, and no one knows that we're coming in because they're all distracted. Or if
Yeah,
we
right.
have, or we have something that's like if we have a ton of team support with us, or if it really depends upon what's happening, or if they're not paying attention to us, right? There's a couple situations, or if we're not leaving our team behind while we're doing it, that's another big one, right? So there's some situations, but not many, where you're gonna want to pin straight in on your own a long distance. When Echo fires stickies at us, first off, it's probably better that you just let it hit your shield than you let it hit you. But if we're trying to stop them from exploding on us or our shield, what we can do is we can just drop our shield and walk backwards, and then this drops them to the floor and means it doesn't explode at anybody. But instead
Yeah.
we drop it and walk forwards, and then it just drops into us, so we take all the damage. Right. You're familiar with shield hopping, yeah? Because we just were shield hopping earlier when we were pushing
Yeah.
in, so you're familiar with it. Here we don't shield at all while we're pushing, right? So this is one of the times where I said we should be shielding, and yet we're not shielding at all. So because we're not shielding at all, right? When we have full shields, we end up taking half damage, and then we we shield for like half a second, and then we drop it, and then our bubble instantly disappeared. So I think that we're not aware of, like, we're not paying attention when we have bubbles or not. So make sure we're paying attention. We can tell that based off of the hue that's around their screen, so pay attention to that. That's awareness. So like, look, this is when we're not bubbled. When we are bubbled, you will see you can't even see it here because it disappears so fast. But you could see it there for like half a second, then we didn't have it, and you can also see that we don't have the hue around their screen because your screen will basically change colors at the very edges of your screen when you have a bubble on you.
Yeah,
And
I
this is
know
where
that,
it's
I think, but I just didn't realize that it bursted so fast in the
Yeah,
bubble.
so
Like,
just keeping in mind that it does do that sometimes, right? And being careful. And then we're not shielding when we're like 20 HP, and then
yeah.
we finally shield, and then that instance we're low. So there we died because we had a lack of shield. Right, we didn't use shield at all. Now on top of that, are you familiar with what choke points are?
Yeah,
Yeah.
technically, yes.
And then are you familiar with what no man's land is?
Uh, not
Not
so much.
not many people are. So, a choke point is obviously any funnel, right? So a tiny little area where people have to funnel through. That's a
Yeah,
choke.
yeah.
This is a choke, right? This would be a choke up here. This is a choke, right? Any tiny little funnel where they have to walk through, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
A
know.
no man's land is any long stretch of space where there's no cover at all that you have to walk through, right? So this is a no man's land right here, because as you're walking through it, if you're in the middle of this, there's not a lot of cover for you to walk
Yeah.
through, right? And when it comes to no man's lands, right, they're not very great to push through, right? Because during that entire time, they can just spam us and shoot at us when we have to walk through this large area where there's no cover at all, right? Now, when we're on attack, certain things that we can do to get through no man's lands if we need to are making sure we're using cover as we're going along. So we would push in and use this, and then we'd go over here and use this, and then we'd come over, and then we push forwards, and then finally go in, right? So just using cover while we're going through, whereas this time we just kind of walk straight down the middle. And then on top of that, we also want to make sure that if it's an option that we're not pushing through the no man's land. So alternatively, we have right side and left side, both of which are not no man's lands. Right side meaning that like we can basically get straight in on top of them basically while having cover and them not being able to see us coming, and also not having great defensive positions to even all, like, where are they all going to go? If their entire team is trying to shoot at us while we come in, like, where are they going to position to do that, right? They can't really do that very effectively. Left side, it does put us in a choke, but it is going to be a lot of times better than walking through the no man's land. So usually it's not a great idea to try to just walk down lane unless you have an opportunity to do so. So coming in right side or left side probably be a better idea. And then when holding a no man's land, that's also a different story. Is like you probably don't want to hold at the front. Same thing with a choke point. You don't want to hold at the front of it because then you have to walk backwards through it, and and they're not even in the middle of it. And then if we hold in the middle of it, right, then we don't want to be doing that either, because then we'd have to walk backwards through it, which would put us at the disadvantage. And then the enemy team, right, they wouldn't even have to walk through it to shoot at us, right? So alternatively, with both a choke point and a no man's land, we want to hold at the end of it, right, like kind of where they're holding on point, right? And then that makes them come to us. So that's just kind of how no man's lands and choke points work. Whereas here we're just kind of trying to walk down main, and it doesn't work out too well for us.
Get in there. This will restore you.
Massive shatter. Alright, we go for a charge immediately. That's not what we want to be doing at the moment. So when it comes to shatters, right, you have certain situations where you can charge and certain situations where you do not. First off, most of the time, it should not be for your first instinct to charge, right? The reason why
Yeah.
is because if we charge here, we're just going to boop everyone out of the way and make it impossible to kill them while only securing one
Yeah.
kill, right? And that's all a charge does, right? One kill while booping everyone away, right? Whereas here, what we could do is we could just walk towards them and do like 2 swings, and then at the very end of our shatter, right as they're about to wake up, then we can charge on anybody who's not dead yet. And then we can do the exact same thing, except for get swing value in, not boop them around, and get a charge in, right? The only time in which we would be charging is if it's only like one person in our shatter, or
Yeah.
if they're all really really far away, right? Here we don't need to charge because we can just walk and swing and then charge at the end. Whereas here we charge immediately, and then that just boops Roadhog and Ryan away, which just stops our team from damaging them, right? So that's a situation which we would not want to charge, or at least if we probably want to charge right at the very end of it, right? Not at the beginning.
Yeah, right. How long is shatter duration? Like, how long are they stunned? Because I always have the feeling that it's too short. Like,
yeah, so you're during a shatter, you're going to have basically like as they're standing up, you can basically fit in like a fire strike, a swing, and a charge, or 2 swings and a charge, or you can do like you can just mix it up a little bit, right? So fire strike and a
yeah,
swing and a charge, or 2 swings and a charge, or if you don't charge at all, you can do 3 swings. It just depends on what you want to be going for in this situation. Like if you're trying to go for big group damage, you might not even want to charge at all, and then just get more swings off. And then like on top of that, like you have to think like, okay, well then once they get up, they're still gonna be in the general area of where you just shattered them, so they're not really they're up, but they're still in the same spot. So that means you can basically get big cleave damage, like 4 swings in really when after you shatter in. So it really depends upon the situation, but you can get a decent amount of damage in there, and you don't have to charge immediately.
yeah, right.
I'm on fire! Party on the objective.
Alright.
Scope round 1.
Okay, why does it not let me click? There we go.
Attack.
Oh, why is it? Okay, for some reason it clicked off of you.
We start this one.
Okay, so a couple things, right? So first off, first fire strike comes like way too early. Like when I guess here, let's look at this, right? So first fire strike comes a little early. Give it a couple of seconds more. Just give them time to
Yeah,
walk
right.
forwards. Second off, we do end up shielding here way too. We also have another fire strike we could go for. I think we see the Widowmaker, so we're not wanting to drop shield for Widow. And then we also hold shield here way too long. Like we see that people are going right side, and we want to be recharging our shield now. Like realistically, like nobody's shooting at our shield at the moment. We're not shielding anybody, and then we go and swing, and then we just come back main and shield again, like against nobody.
Yeah,
Right.
I just didn't realize that the widow was like so low HP that she had to retreat. Like it's
Yep.
often like that. My awareness that I still think someone is some position and I don't see them rotating. Like
Yep.
or
So that's an awareness thing. But then even if Widowmaker was still there, we should not be shielding against that. Why?
because we're in cover.
Okay, because you have
My
cover,
side.
and then what's gonna happen if we shield against Widowmaker and we don't have any shield? Because here we have 600 health and we're not recharging it at all. What's gonna happen if we just focus on Widowmaker and that's it?
Well, they gonna flank or off angle me there
Or
from right side.
or they're just their entire main force of their team, which would consist of Reinhardt and Mercy and the Ana, right, would just come at us and we don't have anything to contest them, right? We don't have a shield. We
Yeah.
aren't even looking at them. We're not even looking to contest them, and we're just not really looking at them at all. So there, we just want to make sure we're recharging our shield, and then on top of that, good counterpin on the Reinhardt. I'd probably go for a pin on Reinhardt in that room. When like he can't really, you have a really short distance to charge. That pin would pretty much kill him. He's not gonna have a lot of time to react to it, and it's a very safe pin to go for because you have your team here with you, so it's not like you just get melted instantly if you attempted to pin. So I'd probably go for a pin in this room while they're in there.
Yeah, right. I think I just tried to play a little more passively there, so the Ryan would come through and I could charge him there, and he's like, will choke, but that didn't work out for me.
Alright, so we want to make sure first off that we're paying attention to the fact that they have Shatter, right? As here, we've basically been doing the exact same amount of damage as the enemy Reinhardt, because we've just been whacking each other, and that's it, right? And neither of us have died, neither of us have really done doing anything else. So ultimately, like, we've just both done the exact same amount of stuff. Therefore, we should probably assume that he's going to have Shatter at the same time as we have Shatter, right? So here, we just want to make sure we're paying attention to it. When we know that he has Shatter, we want to be shielding more often, making sure we're watching for it and intentionally thinking about it. He gets a nano, and then he just shatters immediately, and we're all down, right? So that's.
Could I theoretically cancel Fire Strike with Shatter?
Cancel.
Like that.
Cancel
like that,
your Fire Strike to shatter them.
Yeah, that I could have, because I Fire Struck in that situation, and I just thought way too late that they might have Shatter there, and so if I like half a second before, if I shattered there, would that be possible?
No,
like,
I don't. No, I think you'd have to wait until after the Fire Strike animation.
Yeah, okay, alright.
So the big thing is just paying attention to the fact that they have it and making sure we're not Fire Striking, right? And then that can keep us alive there.
Yeah.
Because it's really the awareness of knowing that it's coming. So pay attention to when was the last time he used it, how much has he been doing, is he alive or dead, right? Like if they're Reinhardt, right, like if you can just compare your ultimates. If it's the very beginning of the game, right, and you win the first fight and the Reinhardt died immediately, well, you're going to be like 70 and he's only going to be like 20, right? But if you guys did the exact same amount of stuff, then he's going to be getting it the exact same amount of time, like pretty much at the same time as you. So in that situation, we just wanted to be aware of the fact that that he had it. Okay. In that situation, that's unfortunate. That I guess right now we're trying to re-engage, but we don't have many teammates with us.
Actually, the Lucio blamed me for him. He beat it. I died a little bit before, and he blamed me for going in. I just didn't want to invest ults. I just want to recontest there, but the Lucio just
in this instance, it's probably not even worth it to recontest, right? Because you're walking into an already lost fight at the moment, right? So, I know last time that we discussed how to tell whether or not fights are won or lost at all, watching kill feed at all.
Well, I often struggle to watch the kill feed. Like, sometimes I get it, sometimes not. Like, it's very situational. If I'm busy doing my stuff, I often get it out of my mind. And if I'm like patient and if I have not that much to focus on, I occasionally watch it.
Yeah, so let's talk about kill feed because it's very important to watch. So how to tell whether or not you've won or lost a fight comes down to watching kill feed. When you are up 1 to 2 people, that is an advantage, right? When you have an advantage, you can play more aggressive, you can go in, they have less people to shoot at you and contest you. When you are down 1 to 2, or sorry, when you're up 2 to 3 people, right now we're up 2 to 3, that is a one fight, right? At that point, you don't want to use ults because it would just be overkill, and you want to get super aggressive, right? This also goes the exact opposite way. When you're down 1 to 2 people, that is a disadvantage, right? You haven't lost the fight yet, but you are losing the fight, so you might want to play more passive. Then when you're down 2 to 3 people, that is a lost fight. That is where you no longer want to be using ultimates, because that'd just be wasting it, and you also want to look to group up. So that means getting out if possible, and if not, you let them kill you, right? So the reason why 2 is the middleman, right, and 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3 is because there's a lot of things that go into whether or not you've won or lost a fight, not just who's up or down people, right? There's a lot more things that go into it, right? Which team has more ultimates? Which team has better positioning? Which team has better closer spawns? Which team has more abilities? Which team has I think I've said a lot of them there. I think maybe there's like one or two more that I just forgot. But which team has more resources, whatnot, right? There's a lot of things that go into it, right? So basically, if we are down 2 people, we can still win it if we have another massive advantage. So if we are down 2 people here, but we have close spawns, right? Because it's a 2 CP map. So let's say we're down 2 people, but we're over here. Well, it's still winnable because it's a 2 CP map, right? Or if we are down 2 people, but their entire team's 1 HP, well, maybe that's still winnable, right? But if we're down 2 people at the very beginning of a fight, which is what we are right now, that's an already lost fight. That's essentially walking into a fight that we are guaranteed to lose because you don't have any additional advantage while walking in. Right? We don't have an additional advantage, which means that they've already just flat up won this fight while we're walking in. So therefore, this doesn't accomplish anything except for feed them more ult charge, and just lead our Mercy and Lucio to waste their ultimates. Right? So does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I get it now, but I actually isn't it the case that sometimes you can try to recontest without using ultimates, just to in case that you get it, like if you're lucky to get it again.
You can, but it's very situational. It'll depend upon the situation. You don't want to when you have a massive disadvantage, right? Here we have a pretty massive disadvantage because we're down 2 players. It's a 6v2. Now, if it was more even, then you can try to contest it. Like, let's say it was a 4v4 and they had 2 players dead in spawn. Well, maybe that's still winnable, right? Or maybe, like I said, we had another advantage that was working in our favor. Maybe we can still do it, but I probably wouldn't come back in a situation where they have their entire team there and we don't have our whole team with us, right? That'd be a situation in which I would just back up.
Yeah.
Because then that wastes 2 ultimates and then we just feed them a bunch of extra ult charge. So notice, and this is why I mentioned the no man's land on the offense, because usually when you don't have a concept of no man's land, you end up not doing good on the defense, is that we end up not having a good concept of the no man's land here on defense, is that we're pushing up into the middle of no man's land when we should be holding on point, right?
Yeah.
And then now we're pushing up to the very front of no man's land when we should be on point, right? So here we just don't seem to understand the concept of it, which means that we probably shouldn't be up this far.
Is there a situation where I should walk through no man's land in order to secure kills?
Yeah, when you've won a fight, or when you're at an advantage, you've won a fight, right? You have when it comes to aggression. Let's talk about aggression scaling. So you have when it comes to aggression, you have a scale, right? On average, you are at 50%. So every time you're coming into a new fight, you're at a neutral of 50% of aggression. When 100% would be very aggressive, 0% would be very passive, right? So when you have resources, advantages, and opportunities, you play more aggressive. When you have a lack of resources, disadvantages, you play more passive, right? So, for example, you can just do this with the things we just talked about. So you can do this with the kills thing, right? When you are up a person, that you go from 50 to 60%. 2 people, 70%. 3 people, 80%, and so forth, right? Same thing the exact opposite way. When you are, maybe if you don't have a shield, when you have shield and when you have your health, you can be at a 50%, or maybe even 60%, but if you don't, let's say we don't have a shield, well, now we might need to tone it down. We might need to be at a 30 or 40% because we don't have resources, right? So you adjust up and downwards on the scale based off of advantages versus disadvantages and resources versus lack of resources. When you are at a significant advantage, right, then you can play more aggressive, even if it's putting you in bad positioning. So here we could push all the way into their spawn if we have a very significant advantage and it's just like a 6v2, right? And then we can just keep securing kills. Even if this is a very poor positioning, because they have very close spawns, because we have such a massive advantage, we can push that, right?
So it isn't just about positioning, but about overall advantage you have over the enemy team, be it like positioning or number of players or whatever.
Positioning in general stops mattering if they have less players, because if they have less players, right, so they have less players to heal, less players to tank, and especially less players to damage, right, how are you going to get punished for being out of position if they have less players to damage you and you have all the healers and tanks in the world to heal you up?
Yeah,
Right? You're not
I
gonna
think I get that.
you're not gonna get punished, right? So if it's a 6v3, they're not gonna have enough damage to melt you faster than your teammates can keep you alive, even if you're in poor position.
Yeah. All
So
right.
at the moment when it's a 6v6, we should not be here, basically.
Yeah. Okay. We might actually want to. I think like at least like 10 minutes. Take a look at Zarya or Sigma. I don't mind. I
Okay.
think I just wrote you the timestamps into the
Yeah, I
chat.
can check that. So which one would you want to go over, Zarya or Sigma?
I actually don't mind, but we could do Zarya. I think it's like my second favorite most played hero.
13, 45.
Ready
All right.
for battle.
Yeah, just skip for a little bit. Yeah.
Ready for battle. Defend objective A.
Oh, Lucius stole that. Let's see. Why is this heal?
Scratch. Defend objective A.
Okay, so this is. I assume then you have not adjusted your bubble sensitivity at all.
No, I
No. All right.
think I kept that default.
Are you familiar with what it does?
Probably how accurate I have to be, similar to Widow Grapple, probably
Yes,
the sensitivity.
exactly the same thing, right? So when it's at 100%, it's going to be very lenient. It's just going to go to whoever's closest to you, even if you're not looking at them. Whereas if it's at 10%, then you're gonna have to be staring straight at the person, right? So here, for example, where we're staring straight at Reinhardt, it goes to Lucio anyways, right? That's because you have it on 100%. If you were to lower this a little bit, this would be more accurate, and you would probably have a higher chance of this actually hitting Reinhardt, who you're trying to look at here, instead of hitting Lucio. Now on top of that, we also just want to pay attention to Lucio and make sure we're not trying to bubble when Lucio is right next to us and in front of him. So we just want to be careful of that, but then also lowering your sensitivity would help as well.
So it's technically also the same like the Ana Nano
Yep.
sensitivity. Okay, all right. I think I know what that
Just the scratch.
was like.
Here we bubble
One.
ourselves against like a Widow, I
Too
think.
early.
Um,
Yeah.
Ready for battle.
First off, Widowmaker's out of our line of sight, so she can't even shoot at us, right? First off. Secondly, usually it's not going to be a great idea to bubble against Widow, like unless you knew that she's going to hit you. A lot of times with skill shot characters, it's not a good idea to bubble against one person in particular, because they can just choose not to shoot at you, basically.
Just the scratch.
So we messed up both bubbles there. Okay, we're also just kind of staring at a Reinhardt here, make sure we're reloading.
Bring it. Get in there. Don't be shy. Hit me. Give me your best shot.
Okay. A lot of our bubbles so far have not been great, so let's talk just on bubbles, the importance of bubbles, because we want to make sure we're getting really good bubbles. When you have good bubbles, right, bubbles provide your tanking and your energy. Tanking is basically, that means that basically your bubbles are going to provide like most of how you tank on Zarya, which is really important that you get good tanking bubbles. But then also on top of that, energy is almost even more important, because when you have high energy, that is going to get you more damage, and then more damage means more ult charge and more kills. When you get more ults, you get more kills. When you get more kills, you win more fights, and then as a result, you win more games, and then you win more rounds and more games, right? So overall, energy is how you do a ton. You're going to be doing so much more with 100 energy than with 10 energy, right? There's a massive difference between the two, and we want to be as high energy as we can, so we want to make sure we're getting good quality out of our abilities, right? So far, we have not gotten any good quality bubbles out. So, besides, I think one, actually. So if we were to look at this one, first off, we get it, and we're slightly delayed with it, to where we want to make sure we're using bubbles off a cooldown. This would be a perfect instance to just, like, walk forwards a little bit, position ourselves right here, bubble, soak up some damage, back off, right? Perfect instance to do that, but instead we delay it a little bit, so that means that we're not getting them out as often as possible. We want to shoot for both quantity and quality. On top of that, right, we also, when we do bubble, we sit behind a Reinhardt, right, where how are we going to get energy or even tanking out of this if Reinhardt is in front of us and taking all the damage? And instead of pushing forwards past the shield, because we have like a 2 seconds where a bubble's active, instead we back up to where we didn't do anything with that bubble, right? So we want to make sure we're getting more aggressive, pushing forwards when we're using our bubbles, not backing up. All Right, good bubble on your Reinhardt though. That was good. Okay, we want to make sure though when we are going for bubbles that we're not completely stopping everything we're doing to go for them. We want to be continuously shooting, continuously doing damage, and then kind of bubbling in between that. Whereas here we kind of go for our own bubbles, but then noticing that like when we're going for bubbles, we kind of just like stop doing things. Right, so here for example, like we go for our bubble in Reinhardt, and we just like we're pausing for a good couple seconds. Right, so we shoot, we shoot, we shoot, we shoot,
Yeah.
we shoot, we shoot, and then reloading. Bubble and Ryan is 1, 2. Okay, and then we're back to shooting, and then we're pausing, and then we're shooting. All right, so we just want to make sure there's like not those random pauses in, but we're continuously shooting and doing damage. Nice bubble.
Now see what I can do.
Okay, lots of reloads happening, right? So we're reloading a ton when we don't need to.
That's a tick. That's a dumb tick, and I don't know how to get rid of it. Like,
Yep. Making sure that we're actively paying attention to it is one thing, but then also if you like really feel like you're messing with it, you can try rebinding it for a little bit and then bringing it back, and then that should break the
yeah,
habit
that's
of
an
it.
idea.
But then
Yeah.
on top of that, it's just also actively paying attention to it, because here we shoot and then we could be actively shooting at Reinhardt, yet we reload when we're at 48.6. So whenever you can actively shoot at somebody, you should not be reloading. Right here, we reload,
Yeah.
and then we shoot for a little bit, and then we shoot a Zarya at Widow, which is fine. We reload a 5 ammo, that's good. Right, but then we shoot 61, reload, and we could be shooting still.
Yeah.
Right, shoot. Okay, we're good. We reload, but that one's fine again.
Bring it. Don't hold back.
Okay.
Привет.
Okay, reloading there.
60 seconds.
Okay, zoning up damage. There we just went a long period without using bubbles. Just again, quantity getting like kind of lagging out on quantity. Okay, good bubbles now. We're getting up high energy, so we just want to utilize it. And noticing that we're playing that we are playing pretty far back, like we're the furthest back on our team besides our Widow, right? Whereas we want to be getting aggressive right now, so we're just wanting to be closer to the fight so we can actually do things here.
Oh, let's break it. Damn.
Okay, we had bubble there for Reinhardt, and maybe did we? Let's see, we're at 3, 2. Actually, no, we did not. Okay, my bad. Didn't see that.
I could use some assistance. I am taking
Okay, very good tracking.
Zarya activate. Hello.
Yeah, I think that's one like mechanical thing I'm pretty good at. Also a soldier to track, but like the rest is yeah, that was waste grab.
Paying attention to the flow of the fight. Right here, we end up grabbing when we see that there's a nano. We're down 2 people in the kill feed. If there's a nano Reinhardt like an inch from us and we're 100 HP, so there. And then we also just solo grab a nano Reinhardt, which isn't gonna accomplish anything, right? So overall, not paying attention to the flow of the fight, awareness, right, and what's happening around us.
How to increase my awareness? Like I think it's often awareness problems that I do mistakes because I think that something would work, but it doesn't.
Yep. So awareness, right? Because awareness seems like on the surface seems like a very vague concept. Whoops. Seems like a very vague concept to where you're like, well, how do I work on awareness? Well, you work on awareness the exact same way that you work on anything else that you're trying to work on, and that is while you're playing, you want to make sure you're focusing on it, right? That means that you're not going to be autopiloting, you're not going to be just playing the play, and you're also, contrary to popular belief, not going to be playing to win, as playing to win doesn't improve you, but when you play to improve, now you're going to be winning more games as a result, right? Now, what that looks like within your own gameplay is your brain is going to look like this, where you're thinking, awareness, right? And when you constantly think about your surroundings, that's all that awareness is thinking about your surroundings, right? When you're constantly paying attention to kill feed and constantly giving yourself that reminder and looking at all the different things that are happening in your gameplay, well, now your awareness is going to be doing better because you're going to be paying attention more. And when you do that for a long enough period of time, it forms it as a positive habit. And once it forms as a positive habit, you no longer need to put in as much work and effort and thought into it, and you can move on to something else to work on, right? Now, we talked about a bunch of different things, so I wouldn't go over everything all at once because that'll get overwhelming. Instead,
Yeah.
focus on one category of things or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category. Does that make sense in terms of how to improve on really awareness, but then also
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah. I think I get it, but often I just end up, if I get into a game, like during queue, I often think about it.
Mhm.
And then if I get into a game, I'm overwhelmed with everything and I just lose to focus, or I stop focusing on the thing I should focus on. Like, I'm often
So
not,
it's
yeah.
changing. It's therefore changing your first off your mindset from winning to improving, right? Because if you're only focusing on winning, then sometimes you put aside improving to win. To win, sometimes improving takes a little bit of a learning curve where you at the very beginning you might be losing a bit more, performing a bit worse while you're focusing. Because if you're focusing on your awareness, you might not be paying attention to some of the other things like your aim, right?
Yeah.
So then but it's in the long run it's going to be worth it because then you build it as a habit and then it's something you don't need to think about anymore, right? Whereas the other thing I would say is also just making sure that while we are where was I going with that? Yeah, just make sure that we are giving ourselves that reminder while we're playing, and if it feels like it's too much, like I said, minimize, like bring it down a little bit. If awareness as a category feels like too much to focus on all at once, make it simpler. Think, okay, this game I'm just gonna focus on kill feed, or this game I'm just gonna focus on getting good bubbles, or this game I'm just gonna focus on paying attention to where is my team at, where's the enemy team at, right? Things like that, right? It's just focusing it down, making it simpler for yourself,
Yeah.
right? So let me think. All right, we're gonna exit out here. So we're gonna go over the main points of the session, do review, and then wrap it up from there. So main points. Let's think through this. So strengths, weaknesses, right? Thinking through like all
Together,
these things.
we are
So we went
strong.
over Zarya and Reinhardt. Reinhardt fire strikes were fine, though make sure we're not fire striking when we're low and when we need to be shielding and when the enemy team has a shatter. So it's just knowing when not to fire strike, and that's pretty much it.
Double kill.
Charges, maybe some situations where I would have gone for a charge, like when Reiner was in that room. And then besides that, charges seem pretty fine. And then shielding didn't need work, right? Shielding is making sure we're shielding when we are low, when the enemy team, or sorry, when our teammates are low, when we're pushing, when we're backing, when we're blocking ultimates, abilities, and when there's a ton of damage coming in. And then we're not just holding it up for everyday random spam. And on top of that, we're letting it recharge so we actually have our shield. We're not just flickering it up every couple of seconds, and we're not trying to push in when we only have like 100, you know, when we only have like 600 on our shield, right? But we're trying to recharge it so we actually have it to push in with. Now, on top of that, let's see, what else is there? So that overall, I'll probably say, and then, let's see, bubble usage, right? Bubble usage didn't need work. It was like a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad. So just make sure we're getting more good bubbles out of it. Don't bubble when people can't see you. Don't bubble against a single widow. Make sure we're lowering our sensitivity on it. Bubble and push forward to your bubble when you have it, and make sure we're not just hiding behind a Reinhardt shield, and be a little bit more aggressive when you have it available.
General question to that. Often if I use bubble too early, or I often use bubble too early, and I push in, it breaks, and then I'm getting hooked or like stunned or whatever. Like it's.
Yep. Well, you're not pushing too far in, right? You're not pushing far enough in to where you can't get out, right? So, for example, like here, if we have this corner, right, we wouldn't just
Yeah.
walk into their team. Instead, what we would do is we would instead of just like hiding around the corner or sitting right here or like bubbling here and then backing up around the corner, what we would do is we would bubble and walk forwards a little bit, poke, and then right as bubble's ending, we back up around the corner again, right? Especially if we see the hook coming in. So it's knowing when to push and when to back out with a bubble, right? And we're just getting a little bit more aggressive while we're pushing in with bubble, right? Whereas we just kind of sat behind our Reinhardt, right? So overall, I'll probably say ability usage goes to like a medium priority for you to work on. Ultimate usage, I think grab we end up wasting in a fight that was lost in the last thing, and we also got a single Reinhardt in it. Shatter, honestly, I think we only saw like one, right? And then that was pretty good. So no issues with Shatter. So overall, I'll probably say I probably needed to see more ultimates, but I'd probably say like a low to medium priority for you to work on it. Just paying attention to the fight when you're winning or losing. Mechanics, no issue really, because Zarya there wasn't an issue, and then Reinhardt there wasn't a thing. Maybe the only thing would just be actions per minute. Make sure we're not taking random breaks and pauses from our shooting. Just being
Yeah.
efficient, especially like while we're bubbling and stuff like that, right? Um, Moving on to positioning, paying attention to cover usage, making sure that we are using cover, like on Reinhardt, for example, like when we're not shielding and we don't have a reason to shield, make sure we're not just like standing here in the open, but we're just standing behind cover and just waiting for resources, right? No man's lands hold defensively at the end of it, not in the front or the middle, same with choke points. And then also when we're pathing through, make sure we're not taking no man's lands when we have the opportunity not to, or the option not to. And then also make sure we're using cover as we're pushing through them. Besides that, that's pretty much it in positioning. So overall, I'll probably say it was like probably like a medium priority for positioning. And then finally, we have awareness/aggression. Awareness/aggression being the big thing here. So, in awareness, pay attention to your health bar and your shield health. Pay attention to, let's see, what are the things? So, pay attention to kill feed and when you're winning or losing and when you're up or down people. Basically,
Yeah.
how kill feed works is it's 1 to 2 is an advantage or disadvantage. 2 to 3 is a won or lost fight, and then that is pretty much it there, right? It's 1, 2, 2 to 3, won or lost fight, no ults or won or lost fights, and then that is pretty much it there. Moving on, you also have just all the other things that go into whether or not you're winning or losing. Having more advantages, more kills, more or not kills, but which team has closer spawns, which team has more abilities, which team has more ults, which team has better positioning, right? All that stuff, right, is also stuff to be aware of. Pay attention to which team has more. I'm zoning out here a little bit. So pay attention to team compositions and how team compositions affect your play style. Make sure you're paying attention to them because that's really important to know how you should be playing, right? So dive spam and brawl, right? Just paying attention to how they affect you in your gameplay. Paying attention to where is my team and where's the enemy team, and then that's it. And then also aggression. Just make sure that we are aggression scaling based off of the advantages versus disadvantages and resources versus lack of resources and whatnot, right? Just going up at the scale and then going down with it, and then sitting at 50%. And then that is pretty much it. That one goes to a medium high. So overall, the order would be awareness/aggression is number 1. Number 2 would be ability usage. Number 3 would be positioning. Number 4 would be ultimate usage, and number 5 would be just making sure that we would be just mechanics and making sure that we are not reloading all the time and working on
Yeah.
magic, and then also making sure that we are not just randomly taking breaks and pauses, right? Any questions about anything we've gone over, or just anything else in the game?
No, I think I'm fine, actually.
All right.
Really helped me out. Like the team comps thing, nobody told me that before. And also that like No Man's Land, nobody told me that actively before. I've had coaching from others, especially like Twitch streamers who coach us during the queue and stuff, but nobody told me that in particular.
Yep. I mean, it's not honestly not like a very well-known thing out. Like those things aren't very well-known outside of like high ranks, right? It's not really something that people even think about or talk about. It just kind of, in fact, a lot of high-rank players wouldn't even really be able to articulate it very well, just because it kind of comes naturally and they don't even think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in any case, let me stop